Alright guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today. For this one, we are still in Shanghai in mainland China, and we're going to continue on with this little mainland Chinese mini-series of out and about videos that I've been doing for you. So now I am in the Changning district, which is kind of in the western part, I guess you could say, of Shanghai, and we're going to check out this place behind me, which is Postwave Brewing. So yeah, this is supposed to be a very nice tap room. A lot of people have recommended this one to me, so I'm quite curious to see how this is going to turn out. So let's crack on with this one and see what it has in store for us. We'll do as we always do. We'll go in, we'll have a little walk around, we'll try some of the beers, we'll try some of the food, and we'll have a good time. But hopefully this makes for another good video, so I'll catch you guys in just a second. Let's do this. So yeah guys, just to let you see what this district's like, you can see we're right across from one of Goose Island's tap rooms there. There you can see Great is Grown, and then Goose Island tap room right above it. But yeah, this is the place we're interested in, Postwave Brewing. So yeah, these guys, local Shanghai brand, you can see here. Dining pub, Postwave, craft beer and more. Yeah, it's almost like in the middle of this kind of outlet mall type district. But yeah, when you come in, you can see obviously they've been enjoying the European football tournament. You can see all the flags and stuff up here, but this is a really nice little pub actually. So yeah, they've got quite a lot of taps and things like that. And then I've just been filming my first tasting here. So yeah, let's crack on to this one and you'll see this review in just a second. Right guys, time for our first tasting then here at Postwave Brewing in Changning in Shanghai. So I noticed on the menu they had a Munich Helles, so I thought, you know, that's a very, very good place to start. We very often do this in our review videos, that we start with the kind of blonde lager beers. So I asked for a 330ml of this beer, and it came out in this kind of Hefeweizen style glass, which I was a little bit surprised about, because normally when it comes to German lagers you would of course serve these in 300, you know, half-litre or 330ml tankards. But yeah, nonetheless, as long as it tastes good, that's not the biggest of deals. But you can see that this beer poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head, and it looks pretty nice. I mean, you can see lovely pale blonde colour, this one, quite a lot of carbonation visible. I'm not sure how well that is going to show up to you guys on the camera there, but it looks good. I mean, remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This is going to go a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil plays a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise and they'll shoot a dark coloured beer. And any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But very often you don't have to care about that with the different kinds of lagers. And remember, the definition of a lager beer is one that undergoes low temperature fermentation using bottom fermenting yeasts, and usually the fermentation takes place between sort of 8 to 12 degrees Celsius. So these beers actually take longer to prepare than the likes of your IPAs and things like this. So yeah, long story short, unusual glass to serve this kind of beer in, but it looks the part of a Helles lager. So yeah, let's have a little look at the nose of this one and see what it's all about. Oh yeah, I mean, in terms of what you'd expect from the Munich Helles style lager, it's there. I mean, you know, I think it's right to call this one, I think it's right to say this one's a little bit sweeter than some of the Munich Helles beers that I've come across before. And it's quite impressive as well that in China they would go as far as calling the beer specifically a Munich Helles. So yeah, I think this is pretty nice. I mean, it gives you everything you'd expect of the style. You've got a lovely, big, light, white, fluffy, bready character out of this one. Bit of grassiness, bit of floral character as well. Nice little touch of fruitiness. And yeah, I think it smells pretty authentic as well. What I look for when it comes to these particular beer styles is authenticity. And this one kind of delivers on that actually, but like I say, it's just that little bit sweeter in its bready character than what you would find in Munich itself. So yeah, the backbone of the beer then, fresh white bready bread crust, little bit of you know, woodiness in there, a little bit of cracker, of course. Wee touch of brown bread. Lots of fluffy white bread in there. Bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit. Sweeter caramel as well. And yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the malty side of this beer then. Yeah, I mean the malt base in this one is everything that you'd expect, just a little bit sweeter I would say compared to other Munich Helles beers that I've tried before. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, little touch earthy, little bit herbal, wee bit floral, wee bit grassy, all things that you'd expect. Very likely German noble hops in this one. A little bit of pear, a little bit of apricot, wee bit of gooseberry, things like that in here. But yeah, these are all things that you would expect of the Munich Helles. It comes across as a little bit raw, like a Brauhaus beer, as you would find in Germany. But all in all, it's pretty nice actually. So yeah, I'm quite curious to see how this one actually translates into the flavour. Apart from being a little bit sweeter than you might expect, there's nothing else that's really unusual about this beer when you consider what style it is. So let's have a look at this one then and see what it's all about. This is the Munich Helles. I'm not sure of the exact percentage because it doesn't say on the menu, but yeah, Munich Helles, our first beer here at Postwave Brewing. Let's have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. Slange, Skål, Gambe. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what you would expect at the style. It's a very light, easy drinking, slightly dry, crisp lager beer. You can't ask for much more than that, in all honesty. Yeah. Yeah. The way that this one goes together, I think, is it's really pretty solid. I mean, as I say, for a Munich Helles lager, you can't ask for much more than this. It feels a little bit more kind of yeasty and slightly creamier than some of the Helles lagers that I've come across before, so maybe you could argue this one is a little bit more like a Czech Svetli rather than being a full Munich Helles, but you know, you'd be getting really nitpicky about that. But let's break down the flavour. Backbone of the beer. Fresh white bready bread crust. A little bit of woodiness in there. Quite a little bit of cracker, I would add. There's a little tiny touch of a sweeter kind of wholemeal brown bready note out of this beer. Then yeah, above that you get the lighter, more crisp white bready character. Then there's then there's a sort of light kind of, you can feel that kind of dry, crisp, almost Pilsner malty character out of this one, which comes out a little bit more further back on the palate, that's for sure. So yeah, a little bit of a more crisp Pilsner malty character further back on the palate. Then in the centre of your palate you have a little bit more, like in the dead centre of your palate you can feel a little bit of straight up sweet caramel there. There's a little touch of like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. Then a more McVitie's digestive biscuit style type flavour. But yeah, like I say, further back on the palate, a bit more of a pardon me, kind of Pilsner malty dryness there. Then the yeasty side of the beer at the back of your palate, it's a little bit more like a farmhouse white bread, a little bit crackery, a little bit woody, stuff like this. And yeah, then you have, as I say, further into the aftertaste, you get that little bit of woody, crackery character. You can feel the bread crusty note coming out of it too. On the hoppy side of things, it's pretty typical German noble. There's a wee bit of earthiness in there, a little bit of herbal character, and as you come further forward, a wee bit more floral, a little bit more grassy, for sure, and it has that wee bit of zestiness, and that lingers into the aftertaste. Let's look at the fruity side of things then, just to round off this one. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer for me, it's yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of like sultana, you know, dry white green grapes. There's a little bit of that going on. Then you have this little bit of yeah, you have this little bit of apricot in the middle of your palate too, some oily pear, a wee bit of gooseberry as you go further forward. And yeah, I think that describes the fruity side of this beer quite well, in all honesty. So yeah, I think this one goes together really quite nicely. Like I say, it's a little bit more, it's not quite as crisp and dry as the typical Helles lager would be, but I still think it goes together really nicely. IBU wise, I would say this beer is maybe about 20-ish IBUs. The malt base has that bit of dryness in it, a bit of smoothness and a slight sweetness on top. Not too much in the way of hoppiness. And you know, in terms of hoppy bitterness, I should say 20 IBUs, like I said. But yeah, quite light-bodied and quite crisp, which is what you want from a Helles lager. So yeah, I think that's a good place to start off at with Postwave Brewing. They've got a few other beers on the menu, which I think look pretty interesting. So we'll maybe do smaller tastings after this and try a few different ones, because I'm quite curious to see how a number of these ones turns out. But yeah, the Munich Helles I felt was a good place to start off. So let's leave it at that for this one, and we'll see what comes in the video next. I'll catch you guys in a second with something else. This was pretty good. Alright guys, well, let's take a little look at the Postwave Brewing menu then here in Shanghai. So yeah, this one is pretty interesting. It's got a whole fold out thing, which I'll show you in just a minute, but let's focus on the beer for the first part then. So here they're selling their beers in 130 milliliter, 330 milliliter and 500 milliliter servings, which is a little bit different from the other breweries we've encountered, which also seem to have like 1, 2 and 3 liter servings, which is a bit crazy. But yeah, you can get an idea of the different beer styles that they have on tap here. So you can see there's a Weizen, the Munich Helles, the Oatmeal Stout, the Belgian Dark Ale, Holy IPA, Postwave IPA, the Red IPA, which I have to say I'm very curious about, American Amber, Lychee Weizen, Lemon Saison, the Sea Beer, and also the Rose Ale. So yeah, in terms of prices and things like that, you can see basically to get to different currencies, what you want to do, you add 10%. So let's just go for this one here, the Munich Helles, which is what I bought, the 330 milliliter Munich Helles. We can say that that is around 38 Hong Kong dollars, so that's about £3.80 sterling, just over €4, maybe $4.50 American. So that gives you a rough idea of how to calculate the prices. So yeah, prices here are pretty reasonable, I have to say. So yeah, that gives you a rough idea of the prices you're going to pay for the beers and things like that. So we'll come back in a little minute and we'll look at the food menu, because I might get a little bit hungry while I'm here, but there's a good little look at the beer menu for you here at Postwave Brewing in Changning, Shanghai. Right guys, well, time for our second tasting then here at Postwave Brewing in the Nanjing area of Shanghai in China. So yeah, the second beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I very much enjoy, and it seems to be one of this brewery's kind of flagship beers actually. So the two guys behind the bar have been really nice in terms of helping me with ordering stuff. There's a bit of a language barrier there, obviously. They don't speak so much English, I don't have a clue about Chinese, so they're using their translator app, I'm using my translator app, but somehow we're kind of getting by. But they're being very, very helpful, and they're trying to help me as much as they can. You can't ask for much more than that. But yeah, they brought me 2 little booklets to have a little look at with regard to the brewery. So I have these 2 here. So it seems that Postwave Brewing is a collaboration between someone in Italy and someone here in China. And yeah, so I think the main idea behind the Postwave beers is to have things that are good to eat with different kinds of food, and that's the idea behind the menu that I've just shown you. So this brewery started in 2020. As I say, one of the owners is Italian, one of the owners is Chinese, and the main guy behind the artwork that the brewery uses is from Beijing, but he also works in Los Angeles quite a lot. That's the main kind of takeaway from this booklet that I've been looking at. But yeah, anyway, beer number 2 that we're going to have a look at is called Postwave IPA, and like I say, I suspect this one is one of their kind of flagship beers. So yeah, when you look at this one, it pours this lovely kind of rich amber golden colour. This one, it's a West Coast IPA from what I understand. So yeah, remember, West Coast IPAs tend to be they tend to use barley malt for the most part in their malt base. New England IPAs use oats and wheat, which is what gives them their haziness. But yeah, this beer, as I say, it seems a bit more old school and more West Coast IPA. I know West Coast IPA is very popular in Italy. In fairness, this brewery reminds me a little bit of like the likes of Birrificio Italiano and some of the other old school Italian breweries that I've encountered, like Brewfest and so on. But yeah, you can see with this one, lovely sort of more orange amber colour with this one. Remember, when it comes to West Coast IPAs, these ones can be a little bit more bready and biscuity, or they can be a little bit more sort of oily and caramelly. I think that's definitely fair to say. This one, going by the colour, I think is going to be somewhere in the middle. But from the aroma of this one, yeah, it smells a little bit sweeter, I think, in honesty. This one the glass is pretty full. It had quite a little bit of head on it, but it's filled right up to the top. Since this has been poured, I've been trying to prep the camera and talk a little bit about this and so on. But yeah, I mean, for me, the aroma of this beer, you've got some lovely kind of fresh brown bready bread crust in there, a good little bit of woody character, a little bit of cracker and so on, sweet brown bread, sweet white bread, a little bit of toasty caramel or biscuit and things like that. There's a little bit of like Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch and so on, I would say. But yeah, overall, the thing is, the colour might have you believing that this one is somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. As I've said in many reviews before, for me, your West Coast IPA can be more bready and biscuity, such as the Pliny the Elder from Russian River, or it can be a little bit more oily and caramelly, such as the Torpedo from Sierra Nevada. This one is definitely in the middle of that, just going by the aroma. But remember, West Coast IPAs have 3 different kinds of hoppings. You've got your early edition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness, but a deeper, danker aroma. You've got late edition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of your wort boil. That gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma, and it gives you a brighter green component. But then you've also got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's all about flavour and aroma, and it's going to give you it's going to give you a very bright green component. So West Coast IPAs use all 3 types of hoppings, whereas New England IPAs use late edition and dry hopping for the most part. So yeah, this one is a more old school beer, there's no doubt in my mind about that. But yeah, looks very nice. I'm seeing more carbonation coming out of this one because of the bottom of the glass there. I think you guys can see that if I put my hand just behind it there and it starts to focus a little bit more. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things with this one, there's a little touch of earthiness in there. There's a nice big sort of floral aromaticity coming out of this one, some nice grassiness in there as well. From the aroma, I'm guessing there's a little bit of Chinook and Cascade in this one. You've got that little bit of grapefruit, that oily pear, grapefruit, sultana type note coming out of the beer. I want to say a little bit of Centennial as well, because it has that little bit of like oily lemony kind of character to it. but there's also a good little bit of orange, so maybe Mosaic or Amarillo coming out of this beer as well. But yeah, all in all, aroma of this one comes across very, very nicely, and it gets a thumbs up from me. So I'm quite curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. So take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beer, but we're going to taste this one now and see what it's like. So yeah, it doesn't say the ABV of the beer on the menu, but yeah, we know this one is the Postwave IPA. I'm guessing it's going to be about 6.5% ABV. But let's taste it and see what it's all about. Slàinte, Gambé. That's pretty good. I will say that's pretty solid. Yeah, this is a pretty solid, like, old school West Coast IPA. There's no doubt in my mind about this one. Like, it has that bit of bitterness, it has the malty sweetness, it has the breadiness and the fruitiness that you want from this style. But yeah, you can kind of tell from the beers that they're selling here at Postwave that they are intended to be paired with food. That's very, very obvious. But let's break the beer down and describe it a bit more in depth. So the middle third of your palate then, the back third of your palate, you can feel that little bit of fresh brown bready bread crust in there. Further forward, you get a wee bit of woodiness. There's a little layer of cracker, sweet brown bread. The white bread is on top of that. Then, yeah, I don't think there's really any wheaty character to this one, in all honesty. Sometimes you can get that little bit of wheaty density out of the beer. But yeah, with this one, above the bready character, you start to get that little bit of toasty. Yeah, you do start to get that little bit of toasty, brown, sugary character out of this one. So there's a little bit of a toasty kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit out of this one. In the middle of your palate, there's a little bit of oily, sweet caramel in there, a nice little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit, like I said. I don't know if you can say Werther's Original Butter Candy Butterscotch with this one, but yeah. At the back of your palate there's a little bit of like the yeasty character coming out, so wholemeal brown bread, a little bit of like McVitie's digestive biscuit in there, a little bit of cracker, a little bit of wood. But yeah, the yeasty character in this beer is more kind of brown bready and kind of farmhousey than anything else. So yeah, definitely back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. And as you move further forward, it kind of squashes down and compresses a little bit. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, back corners of the palate, there's a little touch of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it gets a little bit more herbal, and as you push further forward beyond that, more floral, aromatic, and slightly more kind of spicy, I would say. But yeah, round the front curve of the tongue, a little bit more grassy and zesty, I would say. I do want to say there's a little bit of like Columbus and Chinook in this one. This beer comes across as being very old school in its recipe, and I like that about it. It's pretty enjoyable, I have to say. I've only drunk a tiny little bit of it so far to tell you all these things about the beer, but but yeah, the fruity side of things in this one, I just got given a little taster. I'll need to ask about that later. But the fruity side of this beer, for me, it's quite, as I say, there's just something very old school about this beer. I think it's like an old, it feels very old school, like a sea hop IPA. So for me, there's a bit of piney resinous dankness in the side of the beer there, a little bit more of a zesty, grassy character as well. So on the fruity side of this beer, at the back of that front third of your palate, there's grapefruit in there, quite a strong grapefruit, I would add. Then you have a little bit of, you definitely have that little bit of like more mango, passion fruit, apricot-y type thing as you reach the middle of the front third of your palate. Then as you move further forward, there's a little touch of orange in this one. Not so much orange, I would hasten to add, but as you move further forward, you get a little bit of an oily, limey character out of this one. Maybe a little bit of equinox in there for sure. But yeah, there's something about the fruity side of this beer that is very, very familiar. So that gets a big thumbs up from me. But the fruity side of this one, yeah, grapefruit, passion fruit, mango, bit of orange, bit of lime, bit of apricot and stuff underneath. The way that all of that goes together, I think, is pretty nice. But a proper old school West Coast IPA, this one. Yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel, for me, this beer, mid-bodied, carbonation does have a degree of crispness to it, which is nice. Yeah, nice degree of crispness to it. It's got a little bit of an oily mouthfeel to it, but very, very clean in a sense. The IBUs, I think, are about like 60-ish IBUs, maybe could even be a little bit more, somewhere between 60 and 80, I would say. But yeah, the malt base, bit dry underneath, smooth in the middle, oily and sweet on top. Then you've got that oily, fruity character to it. So yeah, the way everything goes together in this beer is really nice. This is a really good old school, solid West Coast IPA. So if you like the old kind of sea hop West Coast IPAs, this is going to be right up your street. So I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was Postwave IPA, really damn solid. They've got a red IPA and then an oatmeal stout on here. I think those are going to be our next beer. So I'll catch you guys in just a second with something else. Cheers. Alright guys, well let's have a little look at the food menu here at Postwave then. So if we go up to the top corner first, you can see there are a bunch of different salads and things like that. So you've got avocado and shrimp salad, tuna salad. You come down here, you've got some different types of soup and things. I have to say the brunch is quite appealing. You know, you've got different, it looks like garlic bread there and some egg and some sausage and ham and things. That's very, very tempting. I don't know if that's available at the time that I'm here though, but like I say, very, very tempting. So yeah, if you go up here to the pizzas, there's a few different things. You can get margherita, prosciutto ham, salami pizza. And you know, those are coming in about, you know, £8.50 sterling, something like that, €9, $9.50. So yeah, need to try something a little bit later. They've got spaghetti bolognese, cream mushroom and bacon pasta there. Then in the tapas, there's a few different things. Truffle fries, homemade roasted chicken wings, crispy fried squid, nachos with cheese and beef bolognese, pan-fried handmade dumplings. Very tempting, I love my Chinese dumplings. Original Edam, sour and spicy Edam, saute seasonal. I'm not sure exactly what that would be. A few different non-alcoholic drinks and things there. And yeah, over here they've got their main courses and things. So these are quite reasonably priced as well, I have to say. So you can get some fried cod, fish and chips, Bavarian roast pig knuckle. As I say, that's very popular in beer bars here in mainland China. The sausage platter, truffle mushroom soup, the beef cheeseburger, American barbecue pork ribs, Italian cold cut platter, and then Australian M3 ribeye steak. Yeah, I have to say, pretty reasonable selection of things here at Postwave. So I'll need to decide what I actually want to eat, because I am a little bit hungry and we do want to try some more beers, of course. So food is needed. Let's crack on and see what we have next. Cheers. Alright guys, well, time for our third and penultimate tasting then here at Postwave Brewing in Shanghai. So yeah, the next beer that we're going to have a look at is a style that I very much enjoy, but one that you don't come across all that often. So this particular beer is simply just called Red IPA, and from that name I think you know what style it is. So just to let you have a little look at this one, you can see that it's poured a lovely kind of chestnutty mahogany colour. When it poured, it had about a half finger of a frothy, I would have said cream coloured head on it, but yeah, that's faded away to be just a very, very thin kind of foamy layer. But yeah, this beer looks very, very nice, I have to say. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation, one or two bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, but in terms of what you would expect from a red IPA, I think this beer is pretty much in line with that. So yeah, basically my impression of the red IPA is that it's a slightly sweeter and more malty version of a regular IPA West Coast IPA almost, or you could also argue that it's a slightly more hoppy version of the English or Irish red ale, in all honesty. But yeah, I think it looks pretty much in line with what we would expect from the style. So let's have a little look at the nose on this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, first off with this one, you can tell straight away it's proper old school once again, like we said with the West Coast IPA. I think, like, you know, old school kind of sea hops and things in this one. But yeah, the beer, lots of nice kind of brown bready bread crust in there, little bit of cracker, little bit of wood as you often get, but sweet wholemeal brown bread, a little bit of white bread in there as well, toasty kind of brown sugary caramel, McVitie's digestive biscuit, a more oily sweet caramel in there too. And on the hoppy side of things, you know, you've got that little bit of earthiness in there, of course. Nice little bit of herbal character as well. But then yeah, you've got little bits of pine resin, a good little bit of floral aromaticity, some nice kind of brighter, zesty, grassy notes in this one. The green component on this one feels very, or it smells very familiar. Like, you know, you almost have that little bit of it just comes across as very old school. I think like Cascade, Chinook, Amarillo, Citra, something like that. The hoppy character in this one is just so distinctive and so old school that it really is quite nostalgic for me trying this one. But I like it, I really do like it. So yeah, nice little bit of floral aromaticity, a little bit of kind of danker pine resin in there, some zesty grassy elements to this beer as well. Yeah, on the fruity side of things, definitely a little touch of that grapefruity note, like I said. Some oily pear, sultana, pear. Again, these are elements that you would expect from Cascade. Pretty sure there's Cascade hop in this. Yeah, Cascade, oily pear, sultana, a little bit of mango potentially, but not too much. But I'm getting a hell of a lot of orange out of this. Amarillo, I think, is most likely to have been used in this one. The Amarillo character in this one, that big oily, zesty orangey character in this is just so apparent. It could be Mosaic, of course, as well, but it smells a little bit more old school and a bit more zesty and oily, and for me that is a marker of Amarillo. Amarillo's always like that. Yeah, so I mean, aroma wise, this beer really is very nice. Yeah, it smells absolutely beautiful, this one. I'm very curious to see how it turns out. I love red IPAs, and this one hits the aroma point right on the button. So yeah, let's have a taste of this and see what it's all about. Beer number 3, the red IPA. Let's get stuck in. Slange, Skål, Gambe. Yeah, it is actually very similar to the West Coast IPA that I tried in the last tasting video, but just a slight touch more biscuity and caramelly, in honesty. Yeah. Yeah. So, backbone of the beer, you have this little bit of like fresh white bready bread crust, of course. Further forward, there's a little bit of woodiness, a little bit of crackery character, as you very often get. Sort of sweet wholemeal brown bread in there, white bread above that. Yeah, wholemeal brown bread, white bread above that. Then you get this little bit of like toasty caramel, oily sweet caramel into the aftertaste as well, and then a kind of, yeah, McVitie's digestive biscuity character coming out of the beer. So the way that all goes together, I think, is really interesting, to be honest. yeah, malty side of this beer is quite interesting actually, but it comes across as very light and bready. A red IPA, in my experience, tends to be more oily and sweet than this one, but that's not a reason to kind of mark it down in any way. It's still very enjoyable, I have to say that about it, but just maybe a lighter, more bready take on the style, I think. Yeah, interesting stuff. So on the back third of the palate, the yeasty side of things with this beer, for me, yeasty side of the beer, a little bit drier, a little bit more white bready, a little bit of cracker and stuff like that. That lingers into the aftertaste too, but in terms of the hoppy side of the beer, back corners of the palate, there's a little bit of earthiness there, a little bit of herbal character as you move further forward, but yeah, as you move further forward towards the front kind of corners of your palate, there's pine resin in there, there's a spicy floral aromaticity to it, then round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more sort of grassy and oily and slightly more zesty, in all honesty. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is quite nice. On the fruity side of things, yeah, I mean, this beer, it's not quite as orangey in the flavour as I thought it was going to be from the aroma. At the back of that front third of your palate, where you get that nice oily bubble, of course, there is a little bit of a stronger grapefruit in there, and as you move further forward, yeah, wee touch of passion fruit, oily passion fruit and things. But yeah, more oily pear, a little bit datey, a little bit sultana-like. And as you reach the front half of that front third of your palate, it's more of a kind of juicy, soft, orangey kind of note there, but not too oily and zesty. A little bit of a lemony, limey kind of character in there. And yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is quite interesting. Yeah, I think the more that this beer goes together, the more you get this kind of lemony character out of it. It's got this lemony, zesty kind of note to it, but you get a bit more orange, like an oily orange to it as well. So yeah, this is one that you kind of have to let sit on your palate a little bit and just let things adjust. But yeah, it almost comes across as a little bit session IPA like, because it's very bready, but not quite as sweet as I might expect from a red IPA, in all honesty, but still really nice beer. Yeah, so, and pardon me, in terms of the mouthfeel of this one then, just to round off, so for me, I would say this one is mid-bodied, right in the middle of the spectrum. Carbonation is very smooth, more of a wet, smooth mouthfeel with this one, in honesty. In terms of IBU, I think, 60, 70 IBUs, the malt base, bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle, a little bit sweeter on top, and then yeah, you've got just that little bit of oily, fruity character sitting on top there as well. But all in all, quite a nice beer, certainly pretty solid, this one, and an interesting red IPA, but more a bready offering from this style rather than being very malty and very sweet. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. We'll do one more tasting here, and then I think that'll be the end of the video. So I'll catch you guys in a second with something else. Cheers. Alright guys, so yeah, I was feeling a little bit hungry, so I ordered the prosciutto ham pizza. I'm going to take the rocket off that because I'm not the greatest fan of rocket or arugula, as it's sometimes known, but we also have some nice nachos as well, which I'm very, very curious about. So yeah, let's have a little look at these and see what we make of them. We're still enjoying the West Coast IPA as well as we film this, this segment, so let's do this. Right guys, so as you saw a second ago, I ordered one of the pizzas and I ordered some nachos, so let's see what they're like. I'm very curious about this actually. I think it's the first time I've had nachos in China, so let's have a look. That's pretty good. Cheese is good. Spice is kind of in the middle. Like with nachos, you do want a little bit of spice. So yeah, pulled up a big chunk of this here. So yeah, you do want a little bit of spice with these. but not too much in a sense. So 2 little bits here. Yeah, I would say that's good. They've got a nice balance between the cheese there, and there's a little bit of spice comes out of this into the aftertaste, which is kind of what you want. Me eating this like an absolute savage is of course what you want to see. But yeah, nachos are good. Sauce is nice. The sauce is nice. The level of spice is nice. You can't really ask for much more than that, to be honest with you. Let's have a little sip of the beer just to get on to the next thing. West Coast IPAs, I have to say, they do match very, very well with a little bit of spiciness. So let's try a little bit of this pizza and see how it goes down actually. So yeah, the pizza, it's like this. You've got that lovely prosciutto ham in there. You can see really nice cheese. The base is good as well. The base of the pizza looks very, very nice. Yeah, it's got nice seasoning on it too. Let's try this and see. I'm very curious about this. That's good. That is good. Yeah. So the pizza base is nice in this one. You've got a good layer of cheese. You've got good quality ham on this. You can't ask for much more than that from the pizza. That's good. So both my nachos and my pizza I'm very, very happy with in this one. Yeah. I mean, they offered a salami pizza in here. And the thing I'll say about this too is that the base on this pizza is a little bit thicker than I've had in some other places, some other beer places in Shanghai. And that's good too, because they seem to have this impression here that like pizza is like a flatbread, which I'm not the biggest fan of. Like pizza should have just a little bit of bread to it like that, in my opinion. But I think they've done a nice job of this, and you know, when there's an Italian owner behind the company, that isn't a big surprise in all honesty. So yeah, impressed with the food here. I think we can leave it at that for our food section. So I'm going to go away and enjoy the rest of this, and I'll do another 1 or 2 tastings after this segment of the video. So I'll catch you guys in a second with something else. Cheers just now. Right guys, well this will be our 4th and final tasting then here at Postwave Brewing in Shanghai. So for this last video I thought we would move to the darker end of the beer spectrum, and this one is a style that I do quite enjoy, but one that you don't come across all that often these days, particularly at the low ABV end of the spectrum. So yeah, quite curious to see how this one turns out. So this particular beer is simply called Oatmeal Stout. As I say, not sure what ABV this one comes in at. I'm guessing like 5.5%, 6%. But yeah, from the name I've just given you, you can guess what style this one is. So you can see the beer pours this lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. If I lift it up and look at it through the light, it actually does have a good degree of clarity to it, which I think is quite nice. So yeah, it's got this lovely dark sort of chestnutty mahogany type colour to it, I have to say. Not much in the way of visible carbonation, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but that head is pretty much nothing, as you can just see on the corner of the screen there. It did have a very slight sort of fawny colour sort of head when it came out, but yeah, this one really didn't retain its head all that well, in all honesty. But yeah, in terms of appearance, with regard to what you would expect from an oatmeal stout, this one is pretty much on the money, to be honest with you. Like I said, lovely little bit of clarity to this one, but it is a darker beer, so yeah, you're not going to get too much transparency to it. Yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on a few things, type of malts, length of wort boil and so on. So yeah, much of the colour in this beer will be due to the type of malts that we're using. So yeah, let's have a little look at the nose of this one then and see how we go, because the appearance of this beer really isn't that surprising considering what style it is. But yeah, I'm going to say straight away, with regard to this beer being an oatmeal stout, it's really not very surprising in terms of its aroma or its appearance, but it's actually really quite sweet and quite oily and smooth almost. So yeah, for me, I'm actually getting a lot of like brown sugar out of this one. So the backbone of the beer, obviously you have that toasty, rye bready bread crust in there. There's a little bit of that well-fired kind of black malty note to this beer, but not overly much. Lots of roasty rye bready bread crust, like I said. Good little bit of woodiness in this one. Rye bread, wholemeal brown bread. There's almost a little bit of like a kind of bourbon brown sugary note coming out of this beer. In all honesty, you do get this big oily, creamy brown sugary sort of thing out of it too. So yeah, you can smell that sort of porridgey, oatmeal-y character to this one. But yeah, toasty caramel in there, big oily sweet caramel as well, treacle molasses for sure, McVitie's digestive biscuit, but there is an element of chocolate to this one, you know, a sort of milk chocolate's maybe a bit too much. If you put it maybe 50% cocoa chocolate, you're getting a little bit of that out of this beer as well. So yeah, the brown sugary side of this beer is giving you that little touch of booziness as well, but I'm guessing that this beer is only maybe, pardon me, at the upper end about 6.5% ABV. So that's quite interesting as well. I'm getting quite a wee bit of condensation off the glass of this one. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, there's a little bit of earthiness in there, there's a little bit of herbal character, a little touch of like floral grassy sort of thing as well. But I would say that for the most part, the hoppy character in this one is more English rather than anything else, maybe like East Kent Goldings or Fugos or something like this. Yeah, definitely a lot of earthiness in there, a lot of herbal character, some nice floral notes, some nice grassiness. But yeah, there is a fair little bit of fruity character coming out of this beer, but not overly pungent, if I can put it that way. So for me, there's a little bit of a kind of black curranty note in there. There's a little bit of, what would we say? There's a little bit of fig. There's a little, yeah. So there's black currant. There's a little bit of fig in there. There's a little bit of maybe blueberry or something like that. But yeah, I'm getting little bits of like plum, raisin, yeah, all of these kind of things, and I think that goes together really nicely in this one. So yeah, fruity side of this beer is quite interesting actually. I really do like how that sort of pieces together in this one, so gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, aroma wise pretty nice, and again what you would expect from an oatmeal stout. Let's have a taste of this one then and see what it's all about. Our last beer here at Postwave Brewing in Shanghai. Slanju, Skål, cheers, Gambe. Yeah, that's quite it's pretty much in tune with the style, but it's actually a very oily take on the style, I have to say. But I like it. Gets a thumbs up from me. I think this is a nice place to kind of round off when it comes to this brewery, I have to say. But this is definitely going to be a sipper until I decide to go home. So yeah, solid stuff. So well done to Postwave for this. Again, all of their beers have been really solid interpretations of styles that I know quite well. So yeah, it kind of comes across that the beers are a little bit more kind of food pairing type beers, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's definitely something to be aware of when it comes to trying this brewery's beers. They are more beers that you would want to have in conjunction with some of the food that they've got, but I like them. I do really like what they've done with these beers. Good solid takes on beer styles that we know quite well, and you can't go wrong with that. So yeah, the backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely smooth, kind of toasty, brown bready sort of thing. Yeah, so toasty, brown bready sort of thing, and they're slightly well fired. On top of that, there's a little bit of woodiness in there. You have this little bit of leathery brown sugar as well, which is quite interesting. Then a wee bit of cracker. Then you've got rye bread, wholemeal brown bread, this almost kind of chocolatey, spongy type character in the middle of your palate too. And then above that, you start to get some of the kind of more brown sugary elements out of this beer. So yeah, you can feel there's this toasty brown sugary note in there, a more leathery brown sugary character, which quite often is an indicator of a longer wort boil, but in this case I don't think that's really right. So yeah, we've got toasty brown sugar, a more leathery brown sugar in there, oily, kind of sweet caramel for sure. Then in the dead centre of your palate you've got this kind of treacle molasses sort of thing, and maybe just a little hint of a Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that this goes together I think is really, really nice. So yeah, the other thing that you'll pick up on this beer is that between the brown sugar and the bread, there's a little bit of chocolate in there, so maybe a 30 to 40% cocoa chocolate. It's a bit drier further back on the palate, but a bit sweeter further forward. So remember, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, sweeter flavours come out further forward. So on the back third of the palate, you've got this really nice, you do have this bit of yeasty character in there, so it's like a wholemeal brown bready sort of thing. There's a little, well, maybe rye bread in the centre, wholemeal brown bread around the edge, and then a bit of a bread crusty character on top of that, bit of cracker and wood and things. So definitely, yeah, back third of your palate you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward, it condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things for this one, a little bit earthy in the back corners of the palate, little touch herbal as well. And then yeah, as you move further forward, there's a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity there and an oily grassiness around the kind of front curve of your tongue there. So yeah, very old school English stout, this one for sure, but I think it's a slightly higher in ABV than you might find from a regular English stout. So let's look at that front third of your palate then on the fruity side of things, just to round off. So yeah, for me, fruity side of the beer, at the back of that front third of your palate, you do have a very slight plummy, pruny sort of thing. As you move further forward, there's a little bit of datey character, very slight figgy sort of note, and then black currants as well. But yeah, all of these things are, all of these things are quite apparent in this one, and they're just quite nice. I mean, it's one of these beers where all the flavours just kind of blend together very, very well. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is very, very nice in this one. So yeah, gets a thumbs up from me in that sense. The fruity character on this one is very, very soft, and the overall vibe of the beer is more kind of grainy and things like that, actually. So yeah, in terms of an oatmeal stout, it certainly fits the bill. In terms of mouthfeel, I would say that this one is pushing toward the top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. It's got a little bit of dryness to it, but slightly oily character as well. In terms of the IBU, yeah, in terms of the IBU, for me, this beer is quite, it's got a good bit of dryness to it. I mean, I'd say this one is maybe 40, 30, it's maybe about 20-ish IBUs, but as I say, there is a bit of dryness that could push that figure up a little bit. The malt base, as we say, a bit drier underneath, smooth in the middle, and it has this dry, lingering sweetness into the aftertaste. So there's a little bit of fruitiness in there, and the hoppy IBU in this one's probably about 20. But all in all, a very nice and enjoyable oatmeal stout, this beer. So I'm glad that I got the chance to try this, because you don't come across all that many oatmeal stouts these days. The other thing I would add about this one is that into the aftertaste you do get this slightly licoricey sort of flavour out of it, which I find really quite interesting. So yeah, as I always say, just take a bit of time to enjoy these beers and see what flavours come out, but this has been really nice. So yeah, this is the oatmeal stout, our last beer here at Postwave Brewing in Shanghai. I'll catch you guys in a second with my final thoughts on the bar. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed this one. Cheers. Alright guys, well that is the end of my time here then at Postwave Tap Room in Changrin in Shanghai. So yeah, I had a really nice couple of hours here. I got to try 4 different beers, all of which were really good, proper old school takes on styles and things, and beers that would definitely match very, very well with different kinds of foods. So that was really interesting, quite a different approach to what I had at Mingri earlier in the day. But yeah, I have to give real praise to the guys behind the bar, because obviously my Chinese is very limited. Their English wasn't too strong either, but they did their best to make sure I had a good time. We used translation apps to talk to each other, and yeah, so I have to really, really praise the hospitality of the guys here at Postwave. That's probably the best thing about today. But yeah, in total I paid 250 RMB for the beers that I had and for the food and things. That translates to about 275 Hong Kong dollars, £27.50, maybe about, you know, 30 euros, $33 American, something like that. So yeah, all in all, a very, very good experience at Postwave here in Shanghai. So yeah, a little bit of a kind of random out and about video this one, but we got to try some good beers, some proper old school styles, and we had some nice food. So I'm pretty happy about this one, and again, very cool to show you guys another craft beer venue here in Shanghai. So this will be the last of the Out and About series here in mainland China for the moment, but I will be returning at some point very, very soon. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you guys again very, very soon. But until the next time, check out my social media, check out Postwave social media, and I'll see you guys on the next review very, very shortly. Until then, Slange, Skål, cheers, and Gambe. Ciao just now.